Many Nebraskans remain unaware that their state supplies 99% of all American beef exported to Israel. This fact surfaces rarely in local news cycles or everyday conversations across the Cornhusker State, yet it forms the foundational economic link in a larger network of relationships between Nebraska and Israel. The arrangement sounds strange on its face. A landlocked Midwestern state known for cattle feedlots and grain elevators funnels premium kosher beef across oceans to a desert nation thousands of miles away. The connection is not that Israel derives 99% of its total beef supply from Nebraska. Israel maintains domestic production and imports from multiple countries. Instead, the 99% figure applies specifically to beef that originates in the United States. When Israel buys American beef, nearly every pound traces back to a single processing facility in Hastings, Nebraska. This specialized channel operates through precise regulatory approvals, private business operations, and state government facilitation. It serves as the prelude to broader interactions involving AG tech acquisitions, defense manufacturing contracts, university partnerships, and coordinated political missions that embed Israeli priorities into Nebraska's economy and policy apparatus. The mechanics of the beef trade reveal a tightly controlled operation. WR Reserve Protein Group operates the only United States facility authorized by the Israeli government to export kosher beef. Located in Hastings, the plant processes grain-fed Black Angus cattle under simultaneous oversight from the United States Department of Agriculture, Israeli veterinary inspectors, and on-site rabbinical supervisors who enforce chief rabbinate standards. Owner and manager Fischel Ziegelheim oversees daily operations that include slaughter, cutting, packaging, and certification processes designed to meet Israel's strict import requirements. In 2016, Ziegelheim and the company executed the first U.S. beef shipment to Israel in 13 years after Israeli authorities lifted a long-standing ban prompted by earlier bovine spongiform encephalopathy concerns. Nebraska state officials participated directly in the launch. Lieutenant Governor Mike Foley, Agriculture Director Greg Ibach, and U.S. Senator Deb Fischer attended ceremonies and issued public statements celebrating the milestone. Israeli distributors responded by painting trucks with the slogan, "Fresh, Juicy, Marbled Black Angus Beef from Nebraska," turning the origin into a marketing feature inside Israeli supermarkets and restaurants. Trade data confirms the dominance. In 2024, Nebraska exported $13.5 million worth of beef products to Israel, representing more than 99% of total U.S. beef shipments to that market. The volume increased 27% year-over-year through July 2025. Cumulative Nebraska exports to Israel since 1996 exceed $773 million, with Israel ranking as the state's 21st largest trading partner. The WR Reserve plant recently doubled its capacity after receiving a $1 million Nebraska Community Development Block grant. This public funding directly expanded the facility's ability to meet Israeli demand, creating additional jobs in Hastings while locking in the monopoly on U.S.-origin kosher beef. No other American state holds comparable Israeli authorization. The operation relies on a chain of actors: Nebraska cattle producers who supply live animals, WR Reserve workers who handle processing, rabbinical certifiers who stamp each shipment, Israeli importers who distribute the product, and state economic development officials who promote the trade in annual reports. This beef pipeline does not exist in isolation. It functions as the visible entry point into a wider set of relationships that extend into AG tech, defense manufacturing, university research, and official government exchanges. Nebraska corporations have transferred technology and market access to Israeli firms through a series of acquisitions and joint ventures. Lindsay Corporation partnered with Israeli company Tiranis to develop smart pivot irrigation systems that integrate data analytics into center pivot sprinklers used across Nebraska fields. Reinke Manufacturing collaborated with CropX, an Israeli sensor firm that later acquired the Nebraska-based CropMetrics. Valmont Industries purchased Israeli AI specialist Prospera Technologies, folding advanced crop monitoring algorithms into its irrigation equipment portfolio. Greeneye Technology, another Israeli startup, conducts field trials with University of Nebraska-Lincoln researchers and Boak Seed Services in Exeter, applying artificial intelligence to precision herbicide spraying on corn and soybean acres. These deals allow Israeli entities to embed their proprietary systems into Nebraska's $25 billion agricultural economy, while Nebraska firms gain access to Israeli innovation developed for arid conditions. The Nebraska-Israel Agri-Challenge program formalizes this technology transfer. Israeli startups submit proposals addressing drought, wind erosion, and water scarcity. Selected companies receive subsidized travel to Nebraska, on-farm testing, and up to $100,000 in forgivable loans. Winners such as Scarecrow and Phytech deploy sensors and mitigation tools directly on Nebraska land, generating data that benefits the Israeli firms long-term. The University of Nebraska System and Creighton University host dedicated Israel and Judaic Studies centers that channel academic resources into these collaborations. The Norman and Bernice Harris Center for Judaic Studies at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and the Natan and Hannah Schwalb Center for Israel and Jewish Studies at the University of Nebraska-Omaha organize joint research projects, student exchanges, and faculty visits that align state-funded higher education with Israeli agricultural priorities. Defense manufacturing creates another direct financial channel. Nebraska companies have secured nearly $13 million in U.S. foreign military financing since 1996 to produce equipment for the Israeli Defense Forces. Almond Brothers, Inholdridge and Mill Power Source participate in these contracts, routing federal taxpayer dollars through Nebraska facilities into Israeli military supply chains. Engineering firm HDR maintains its global headquarters in Omaha and a permanent office in Tel Aviv. HDR executives contribute to Israeli infrastructure and defense-related projects while simultaneously bidding on Nebraska public works. The company's leadership joined official state delegations to expand these cross-border contracts. Political and civic organizations coordinate the interactions that sustain all these relationships. The Jewish Federation of Omaha organizes trade missions, cultural programs, and policy briefings that connect Nebraska officials with Israeli counterparts. The Federation partners with the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, an advocacy group staffed by former Israeli military and government personnel. Together, they shape Nebraska's official stance on international issues. In 2023, Governor Jim Pillen issued a proclamation adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism and directing state agencies to avoid business with entities participating in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel. State Senator Brian Hardin introduced legislation in 2025 to embed the same definition into public school and university policies. Combat Anti-Semitism movement representatives testified at legislative hearings and provided strategic guidance. The pinnacle of these coordinated efforts occurred during Governor Jim Pillen's October 2025 Trade and Solidarity Mission to Israel. The four-day trip from October 27th to 30th included Nebraska Department of Economic Development officials, agricultural executives, manufacturing leaders, HDR representatives, and Fischl Ziegelheim. The delegation met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Isaac Herzog, and U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee. They toured the Nova Festival Memorial and Kfar Aza Kibbutz while negotiating expanded beef contracts and defense technology sales. The Jewish Federation of Omaha and Combat Anti-Semitism Movement jointly organized the itinerary, ensuring that business promotion aligned with political solidarity. Senator Deb Fischer and Congressman Adrian Smith previously assisted in reopening the beef market in 2016, leveraging their federal positions to benefit the Hastings facility. These individuals and organizations form an interlocking network. Ziegelheim supplies the beef that funds his participation in state missions. The Federation and Combat Anti-Semitism Movement supply the logistical and ideological framework. Nebraska governors and legislators supply the official endorsement and taxpayer resources. The pattern repeats across sectors. Israeli consuls general travel regularly to Nebraska for events hosted by the same civic groups. Nebraska legislators accept invitations to Israel on trips funded through these channels. University centers receive implicit state support for programs that prioritize Israeli research agendas. Each element reinforces the others. The beef monopoly provides the initial economic justification. AG tech deals and defense contracts expand the financial flows. Political missions and anti-Semitism legislation lock in policy alignment. The 1993 Memorandum of Understanding signed by Governor Ben Nelson established the formal entry point, but the operational machinery now runs through specific people and entities who move seamlessly between private profit and public office. This prelude exposes the strangeness of the beef connection precisely because it operates so efficiently and invisibly for most Nebraskans. Residents in Omaha, Lincoln, or rural counties rarely encounter discussions of Hastings kosher beef shipments or the Israeli regulatory approvals that grant WR Reserve its exclusive status. Yet the infrastructure exists and expands year after year. Cattle move from Nebraska feedlots to the Hastings plant. Certified shipments cross the Atlantic. Israeli trucks display Nebraska branding. In parallel, Israeli startups test sensors in Nebraska fields, Nebraska defense firms ship components to the Israeli military, and state executives fly to Tel Aviv on missions arranged by organizations whose primary focus remains Israeli interests. The beef pipeline is not an anomaly. It is the gateway that reveals how Nebraska's agricultural base, manufacturing capacity, academic resources, and governmental authority have been integrated into a sustained relationship with Israel through identifiable businesses, individuals, and networks. The full scope of this integration, marked by exclusive approvals, taxpayer-financed contracts, technology transfers, and policy coordination, extends far beyond the slaughterhouse in Hastings. It encompasses the entire apparatus that turns Nebraska's productive capacity into a reliable supplier for Israeli needs while directing state policy to protect and expand those arrangements.